Alright, yo, what's up? My name is Patrouski, and today I wanted to do a little bit of a PokeMMO, I guess, history lesson or just story time, talking about a different time, talking about reasons why TMs used to be pretty disgustingly expensive back in the day. Mainly some of those really crucial or really important TMs in Earthquake and Rockslide, especially. Earthquake and Rockslide used to be really expensive because the PokeMMO TM system was very different, and I will go on to explain that a little more depth. So essentially, nowadays we have the system where also hello, welcome. If you're liking the video, make sure to like it. If you dislike it, etc. Subscribe, yada yada. YouTube spiel. You guys know the deal. Let's go ahead and get into the story. So essentially, nowadays the system works as though you can buy any TMs from shopping malls, the Celadon shopping mall, or the Unova shopping mall over on Route 9, I believe. There might be some other ones. You can buy most TMs from shopping malls. There's also TMs located around different Pokemarts around the game. It's really easy. Every TM has like a stable price because of that, right? Because why would anyone buy, an Earthquake TM for like 50k on the GTL when you could go buy it for like 30k from the shop or whatever? There's always a static price on them now. It holds the market together. You're still, consuming or draining Pokeyen from the economy, which is called a gold sink. It's often what it's referred to, which stabilizes the economy and stops inflation from happening. TMs are an important gold sink. But without allowing the prices to get out of control. But what happened back in the day, we didn't have that. Back in the day, what happened was the only way, this is insane to think about now, but the player base was a lot smaller, so it still worked to some extent, but it very quickly became insane once too many people started playing. Back in the day, the only way to get, let's say, an Earthquake TM was you were allotted one Earthquake TM per character for playing through the storyline, and that was it. Imagine if you're a PvP player and let's say you have, just like 30 competitive Pokemon. Let's say 5 of those competitive Pokemon need Earthquake, which is pretty light or whatever. Earthquake is an extremely common move. Imagine needing 5 Earthquakes per character, but you're only allotted 1. So you have a couple options. You can create an alt account and play through an entire another region to get, which back then the only region in the game was Kanto. Let's get that straight. The only region in the game was Fire Red back then during this time period, during like 2013 to 2014 sort of time period, maybe up to 2015 or so. But 2015 we got Emerald and Hoenn and everything. But essentially, imagine, you need access to 5 Earthquake TMs. You can play through 5 regions, or you can make a little bit of Pokeyen on your main account and then buy them off the GTL. So that's what happened. And people would buy them and, etc. Sometimes people would play through them, and playing through storylines on alternate accounts and regions and everything became one of the best money-making methods in the game because TMs were in such short supply. You'd see things like Earthquake, things like Rockslide reaching 50, 60k or 80k. And eventually, the heights that I saw Earthquake reach around 100 to 120k Pokeyen, which is just insane to think about, 4 times the current price of it at a stable price. If you played back then, you might remember different numbers, and this is just obviously for my personal memory. So please let me know if you guys saw Earthquakes hit higher prices or even crazier things or stuff like that. There's a lot to talk about with past PokeMMO economy and history, and I think there's a lot of faults and a lot of mistakes that PokeMMO made with its economy and history, which is why it's at such a good state now. I always praise and I always talk about like how incredible the PokeMMO economy is because there's really no other Pokemon MMO that has this sort of stable economy, and it took a lot of trial and error. It took things like Earthquake TMs reaching 100k for us to ever reach this point and ever correct these mistakes and realize how we fix this. And it's been a really interesting journey, and I think sharing little tidbits like this and sharing like, hey, like the hilarity of it all, and sharing like how, from our perspective now, like, oh, that's crazy. How could they ever think that would work? But I mean, it makes sense back in the day. And it was just funny. It was just crazy. It really created demand and a really high premium on those Earthquake TMs. And it was a really good meme. Another little story to go alongside that, I guess, was that I remember being such a little, I guess, rebel kid, little stupid kid, where I remember my teammates told me, hey, make sure to save your Earthquake and Rockslide TMs because they're really important from the storyline. And you know what I did? I immediately taught my useless Shuckle Earthquake and Rockslide just because they told me not to. Don't be like me. Don't do this sort of thing. That was definitely just the type of kid that I was, and I learned the hard way on a lot of things because of that. But it was a really fun time. It was a fun experience. It was crazy to see Earthquakes reach those prices, but I think it's pretty interesting to see like how, playing through the storylines over and over again, just do that one TM. It was nuts. And that existed for Thunderbolt, that existed for Ice, all these other TMs, that was the same case. But Earthquake is like the best example, I think, because I guess it was just like the TM. It was just, especially like back then, like Earthquake was like the best move in like Gen 1 or like just, I guess still Gen 3 technically, mechanic wise and everything. We still had a lot of Gen 3 Pokemon. Like back when we only had Fire Red, we still had access to things like Shuckle. We still had access to like some of those Pokemon. I remember Tyranitar/Larvitar wasn't added for a bit, if I recall correctly, but a lot of those Gen 2 and Gen 3 Pokemon were added to the Sevi Islands, which was a big deal. Another thing about, I guess, old movesets and old learning was, before we had the tutors, we had a weird tutor system for a really, really long time in PokeMMO. And maybe I'll have to make an entire video, I guess, talking about that, but it's pretty interesting. I remember what would happen is, it was very similar to the TM system, where you would have tutors around the map that you'd be able to use once per account. So that was another benefit of running through alt accounts, is having access to those tutors. The one that I remember specifically is on Island 5, I think, if you run south, or Island 6, I think it's Island 6 or 7. It's Island 6 or 7 on these Sevi Islands in Kanto. If you run south, there's like a little bridge, and on that bridge, there's a person in the middle of the bridge. If you talk to him, he teaches you Swords Dance. And you could only teach Swords Dance. Like, imagine having to not only complete all of Kanto, but to have to complete the Sevi Islands to get access to one Swords Dance on one Pokemon. Like, that is just extreme levels of, like, gatekeeping of movesets and competitive play. And it's really hard for people to get into competitive play when that's the case. And I'm really glad they've changed that and fixed that over the years. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I remember, like, what you would have to do is you'd have to hit up people in trade chat, or hit up people in some way and be like, hey, I'm looking for a Swords Dance tutor. Do you have access to that on this account or on an alt account? Like, have you saved or not used your Swords Dance tutor? And people would have to, essentially trade people their competitive Pokemon and risk them the honor system, and risk them training Swords Dance to their Pokemon with the tutor. And then not just stealing their comp, right? And back then, I believe the devs, I could be corrected, but I believe the devs didn't actually, like, act on the scams. Nowadays, if someone scams you in PokeMMO, and it is clear in the chat, if you discuss and you just say, like, hey, like, I'm trading you this for this, and they scam you, they can actually get banned. The devs actually do act on malicious scams, stuff like that nowadays. But back in the day, they didn't, because most games don't. It's really hard to do, like, the he said, she said kind of stuff and maneuver that and navigate that in a social situation. So most games don't usually act on scams. If you're scammed, it sucks, but you can't really get banned usually. And Pokemon nowadays they do, but back then they didn't. And that was brutal. Back in the day, when you had to risk, like, a really important competitive Pokemon that you spent all this time on, way more time than on today, especially if you EV trained it, where, like, I've made videos talking about this in the past, where, like, EV training back then would take like 10 hours, like 10 to 12 hours to train one stat. It was disgusting, because you only had single encounter, +1, like, the best you would have is like +2 per battle, +2 each. Like, let's say I kill a Haunter, +2 special attack EVs per battle, awesome. But that's, like, it was so bad, so slow. And I think it's important to look back on PokeMMO history like this and take these lessons and understand how far we've come and how far we've improved. And I think it's just really, really cool. Yeah, the tutor stuff was crazy. The TM stuff was crazy. Movesetting Pokemon just in general used to be a lot more difficult and a lot more expensive. I love today's systems of having just the 2 tutors in each PC is just so fantastic, and we're lucky to have it. So thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully you guys found this entertaining, enjoyable, a fun little PokeMMO history lesson. If you guys like seeing stories like this, or history lessons, or if you want to see a little more, obviously today I just did, like, very casual, just storytelling over some background shiny hunting alongside some Pokeyen making with the Flame Orb method, hunting at Heatmore. But if you guys want to see maybe some more, like, I guess, in-depth edited story stuff, or anything like that, let me know in the comments. Give me your feedback as always. Like the video if you liked it, dislike if you didn't, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more daily PokeMMO content, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.